Hey, how's it going? In this video, we're going to be talking about the strategy for importing and conversions and how to leverage it and how I like to think about it when it comes to audiences and how to push into the right audience at the right time so you don't just blow out your budget and have terrible CPAs and your sales team is angry and everything's a mess. So this is going to be surrounding importing conversions. Now, if you don't know what importing conversions are, it's essentially a way to filter out information from, the platform saying that, I'm not going after any lead, I'm going after these kinds of leads and only sending back positive data into Google. So an example of that would be if you have a form on your website and they hit a thank you page. That thank you page triggers data to be sent back over to Google. That will just happen regardless. So in Google's eyes, it just wants more people to hit the thank you page. When that happens, it doesn't care if they're good leads or bad leads or whatever. It just wants people to hit the thank you page. That doesn't always mean it's good for people to hit the thank you page. You can have a lot of spam traffic that will just hit the thank you page and then move on because it's just an automated system. And so what importing conversions allows you to do is say, okay, that lead goes to the pipeline, hits the thank you page, enters my CRM platform or wherever you're capturing the lead. When you capture the lead, you have a team or something is going on where you check the quality of the lead, you call them, whatever the case is. Now, what you can do after that is say, okay, I called them, they're a qualified lead, move them to the next stage in your pipeline. And when they hit that stage in the pipeline, that data will be sent to Google Ads and Meta Ads. So Google and Meta will only see qualified data. It won't just see the general leads that come in. Now, this sounds amazing, but there's a whole entire strategy when it comes to this. And I want to first talk about the importance of why you'd want to do this and how to leverage it. So why is importing in conversions a good thing? It allows you, like I just said, to filter data so it will push the algorithm in the direction of more qualified leads. Now, we want to import in data because obviously we want to have a sales team that is getting more qualified leads, closing more deals, everyone's happy, team morale is better, and the algorithm will try to get more and more and more of those qualified leads. It will also reduce spam. So instead of having those, annoying calls where you call and the person doesn't know, what number it is, or the number doesn't even go through, and they say, oh, I never filled out this form, whatever the case is, it also helps reduce spam because you're not importing and telling Google, yes, anyone that lands on the thank you page, I want to optimize for. So you're reducing spam by telling the algorithm only the qualified data. You're only giving it positive feedback when a quality lead comes through. Now, it also increases the sales team's close rates. So this is pretty straightforward, right? More qualified leads, and then they're not having to deal with like people that are not really sold, they're not really qualified, but they're trying to see if they're qualified, or maybe they can squeeze out a couple sales, maybe give them a deal. But it's not as clean as just having someone that says, hey, I'm ready for your service, let's go right now kind of thing. That's our goal as marketers, is we want to serve up those types of people to your sales team because that makes everyone happy and it gives a really positive feedback loop. Now, it also gives better targeting to your audience pool. So if you have a specific offer that you can leverage, your sales team's really good, there's something that you can leverage further down the funnel that's not in marketing itself, that data feedback will be pushed back into the algorithm to then say, hey, our sales team can close these types of leads, but our competitors can't close these types of leads. Well, if we know that and they're not bidding on those people, then we can lean more and more and more into that audience pool. They might say, oh, I don't want the algorithm to go after these people because it's not qualified. They might be having their own qualified leads. And so it allows you to leverage more around your personal brand versus just a general action. And so it'll allow you to close leads that others can't. And that gives you obviously an advantage in the algorithm as well. So the strategy when it comes to this is think of it as like a timeline. So earlier in the account versus later in the account, and that's based off of the volume of the action that you want to be taken, which would be leads to qualified leads to sold leads, right? So if you have 30 leads a month, sweet, you can move to the next stage. If you have 30 of these, you can move to the next stage. That's kind of the general thought. Now you can have maybe 20 a month, or somewhere between 20 and 30 a month is typically where I like to see accounts before I fully switch them over to the next system. So what this means is that if I have, let's say, a general lead that comes in from an ad, then that data will be either imported in or just sent back via a thank you page. Typically, it's just sent back through a thank you page, but in the case of imports, let's just say it imports it back in. Now, if we have qualified leads that are being tracked as well, what I can see is, okay, we have enough volume of general leads to where there's enough data to even turn on qualified leads, meaning that we're looking at like a handful of qualified leads, at least like 5, let's say, a month, and then we get maybe like, 15 or 20 leads. We're looking at about 25% of the leads are qualified, and then it sends back into the algorithm and obviously prioritizes that. Now, 25% is not that much. Ideally, it should be like 80 to 90%. But with that being said, it's the leap between lead to qualified lead that's the most important process that I see in most accounts, because this is the earliest stages and where most accounts are sort of in between. And so what this means is that we want to make sure that the algorithm is able to capture and leverage the data, and we have a smooth transition from one stage to the next. We're not just going to jump from lead to qualified lead immediately. We're going to have a lead, blend the two together, so both we're tracking leads and qualified leads, so we're double counting the qualified leads as good, to then give the algorithm a slight priority to go more after qualified leads. Now, when qualified leads reaches a good amount, we have enough data, we have more ad spend, meaning we're looking at like 15, 20, sometimes 25 qualified leads a month, then I'll fully transition this over to just qualified leads instead of leads and qualified leads. Now, as you can see, the next jump is the exact same thing. Qualified lead to sold lead. Now, the sold lead is a little bit different. The reason for that is because the lag time between someone that's qualified to someone that's sold could be very, very long. And so I recommend most people to stay within the qualified lead section of this, because if you go beyond that, the algorithm is going to have old data, and you want to make sure that the data is as clean as possible so it can be as active as possible in the current market settings in order to then be best leveraged. Because if I had a lead that, was 7 months ago and now they're sold, that type of ICP or those user signals are no longer going to be seen, because it could be winter to summer to spring. I mean, there's so many different factors that come into play that will change the buying patterns of people, that you want to make sure that your leads are imported in within like 2 days. Ideally within 1 day. So that's why I say most people are typically within that lead to qualified lead range. And that transition from lead to qualified is the hardest part. Now, if you have a really good buying cycle, you could, layer on, for example, a sold lead as a duplicate to the qualified lead to see what that does to the algorithm. I've done that a few times and it's worked. But I've never been in a full scenario where, sold leads like weeks later are the main imports, because that data is old. Unless, the only time I would do this would be if it's like a sold lead within, like I said, 1 or 2 days. So that's the general strategy behind how I would optimize an account with imports. Now, if you don't know, and that was me looking for a Google ad logo, imports are very, very different based on your CRM platform. So I use Go High Level for my CRM, and I'm using this for my, Facebook ads right now as well. So you can do this not just in Google, but also in Facebook. But I'm not spending on Google right now. But what you want to do is, if I were to go into summary, and then if I were to go into plus, and I go into import, then I go into CRM files or other data sources. So I'm looking at, for example, CRMs that have API connection with Google. I go track conversions from clicks, and then I will skip this step and use the data source later. Now, you could connect a data source if it's already in here. I don't believe Go High Level is still in here. Should be lead connector, but I don't think it is. Yeah, so if it's not, totally fine. If it is, obviously click it. If it's not, then I'll just skip the step and move on to the next category. I'm going to put this as qualified lead, and I'll do qualified lead test, and then I'll hit add. Now, I'm not going to do this because it's going to keep it in the account. So what it's going to look like once you add it is, inside of this, you're going to see, let me actually go back to qualified, this one, there we go. When you're in here, you're going to have these different settings. Action optimizations. This is obviously if you want to set to primary, secondary. Value. This is also a very interesting thing that I would probably stay away from first. Leave this on 1 for default. but that's something that might be another video in the future. Import from clicks, which you've already set up. Count every conversion. Now, it depends on your CRM, and this will probably be a question for your dev team, but there are some cases where you want to put one. I like to put every, just because I want to make sure that I'm sending over. I'm going to filter the data on the CRM side, so I don't need to filter it on the Google Ads side. And then the click-through conversion window, I always max this out to as long as possible. And then engage view conversion, I put this on 1 day because I don't want to attribute any sort of engage view conversions from someone that might just be passing by that saw the ad and then converted. It's not as accurate, and you're not able to fully attribute properly when it comes to the right campaigns, because what tends to happen with engage view conversions is that you go after bottom of funnel sort of pass by and not actually impact type of campaigns. But it's already on click, so not a big deal, but just wanted to give you guys that information. So with that being said, now this strategy is pretty common, I would say, among people that know what they're doing. But I would say that anyone that doesn't understand your CRM first, see if it can integrate with Google as well as Facebook, and then try to implement this strategy. It can work both for Facebook and Google. I'm actually doing this right now for my business when it comes to Facebook ads. So anyways, thanks again. I hope you got something from this video on the strategy side of it, and I will see you in the next one.